The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Hope you are doing well. Welcome to another episode of The Stack, where we discuss people, business, and technology. Today, we're going to talk about a crucial topic, and this is a crucial area for managed services providers on how to effectively scope out data migration. Whether this is due to a merger, moving data from on-premise servers to the cloud, or consolidating data for more of a streamlined experience, migrations are common, but yet still a very challenging task for many MSPs. So we're going to explore some of the key planning areas to get that smooth transition or the smooth migration. We're going to talk about minimizing some of the impact on our users, all of our end users, and also ensuring that everything stays on track and on budget, because it's obviously very critical for our clients and also for us from a profitability and overall success perspective. So to help us navigate through this complex process, I've got a special guest. I've got Colin Hogg with Movebot. And how are you doing today, Colin? Welcome.
I'm very well, Dan. It's great to see you again.
It's good to see you as well. And so we're going to talk about some of these best practices, these common pitfalls, and the tools to make a migration project successful. And I know this is 100% in your wheelhouse. You live and breathe and probably dream about data migrations, right?
Unfortunately, sometimes I do. It's it's somewhat disturbing, but as an organization, we live and breathe data migrations. That's for sure.
And that's awesome because we as MSPs, there is so much to what we do running an MSP. There's so many different components of it, and there's no way we can all be experts in every aspect of it. And having great partners like Movebot to help us become more successful is key. And so we appreciate your passion in this particular area because it allows us to be more successful from that angle. So let's get started with some of the basics. Migrations can seem extremely daunting, not only for MSPs, but also their clients. So can you explain why it's so crucial for MSPs to scope out the migration thoroughly before even beginning the process?
Sure. And I think one of the things I'll say at the moment, one of the reasons for our being is to actually make this process, take that daunting element out, take the fear out of it and actually make it a really manageable process. So, when it comes to scoping out the migration, this is what we want to do. We want to kind of give people as much information as they can up front, so that they you remove that complexity. You can see it as a straightforward process. The tool is designed to be easy to use, so your technicians at all levels can actually perform migrations rather than sitting perhaps in the wheelhouse of one technician, one key person or other. So that's our kind of reason for being, if you like. In terms of scoping it out, some of the key components really are, from an MSP perspective, if you've not, if you're putting together a proposal for a client, you kind of need to know, how much data do I have? How long is it going to take? Are we going to have some quirks in there? And knowing all that up front and having the information ahead of time really helps with that. Just making sure that you can plan the process accordingly. How are we going to tackle this migration? What's our best process to make this a really smooth experience for for the client ultimately, but for us as well? Let's make this a low stress environment. So that's why it's really important to have the time to scope out a migration.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more than just we're going to move data from location A to location B, right? There's so many variables, and in order for it to be successful, we got to think through all those what ifs. We've got to think through, what could go wrong and what to expect. Especially if there's a migration happening over a weekend here. Here in the States, it's Friday evening right now as we're recording this, and it's a scenario where there's probably a lot of migrations planned over this upcoming weekend, and it takes a lot of that pre-planning in order to make that a success. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's take a look at selecting the right destination platform, because this is a critical area. I'd like to have you walk us through a little bit how an MSP can help their clients suit select the most suitable platform for their needs. Because if we're saying we're going to move data overall from location A to location B, there could be different areas in which that data might be more suitable. So how do we make those decisions and help our clients?
Yeah, sure. I think it's an interesting thing. If you've got, I think making sure your data's in the right place for the end user, if you like. And an example might be if you've got a lot of large media files, and where do you want to put them from a collaboration perspective? If you've got remote workers and they're looking to collaborate, just making sure that the platform for at least those users, if not every user, is the appropriate platform.
Right.
There are some platforms that are incredibly well designed for handling those larger files, and then there are other platforms where things like SharePoint and so on are great when there's handle the more traditional sort of file sizes. But if you're getting into very large files and that type of thing, there might be other more differently designed, architected platforms that will allow access to those files. So I think it's having a look at the data that exists, and then the other thing that really comes into this the platform is how much data do we actually want to bring all the data across? If we're moving, say, from a file server, if we've got data that's over a certain age, maybe we want to say that, well, that data's never been touched for 5 years. We still want to move it off our server, but do we want to move it into a backup solution? So, we, as a Movebot, we connect to over 30 different platforms. So you can select, you can be selective with your clients and say, okay, well, actually this data is better to reside in this place. This data is better to reside in that place. And for our general working files, this is where most of the organization is going to be. We'll move that data there. So it just allows people to explore, the best solutions for their clients, if you like.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned remote workers. You mentioned maybe different departments in the organization, and I think when we take a look at familiarity too. When you have end users that are used to maybe going to a map drive to find certain data, and if there is no strategic plan as far as saying, okay, this is what the new process is going to be, it can lead to chaos. And and I think too, that the end user input is critical, just because there may be things that they've always wished, that in the back of their mind they're like, oh, if I was in control, I would do this. And this is the perfect opportunity for them to be able to say, hey, I would love to make a change. And and it might be a complete paradigm shift, but if it comes from those end users, they're the key ones that are working it, and it can have a major impact on their overall workflow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's what the end user experience is going to be, and if you're keeping your end users and your customers happy, then it's good for business. Yeah.
Yeah. So, think about data volume. There's different things that are part of the migration process. Data volume would be one that I guess jumps to mind, but also file characteristics. When an MSP is looking at a migration, what are some of the things that they should consider when it comes to assessing that data to be migrated?
Yeah. So one of the things, there's a number of those things you've touched accurately on: some data volume, number of files, and the size of those files and what those distribution are. That distribution that's actually going to have a significant impact on the data. For example, the speed of the migration. How long is it going to take? So data volume, it really helps with the scoping out the cost, if you like. If you've got 10 terabytes of data, it's going to cost X. And then the other factor that comes into that is, okay, well, how long is this going to take? And depending on the platform, though, all platforms are not equal in terms of getting data into them. And if you take this example, if we were taking 10 terabytes of data from Google and popping it into SharePoint, there's a number of other factors that are going to come out there. Things like what are our file name sanitization. Google allows a lot of wildness in its platform, with lots of different file names. So those you need to know that that's an issue. Deduplication as well. You have a situation where you can, mostly by error, that users in the Google environment can create the same file and folder with exactly the same name in the same place. So other platforms, most sane platforms, don't allow that. So you got to know that that's going to be an issue. And yeah, so those are some of the sort of key issues of file sanitization, deduplication, and being able to sort of handle those. So what we have is a scan that MSPs can run on the source to get an idea if there's going to be any errors that come up. And with Movebot, those errors that I've talked about, deduplication, file sanitization, and so on, they're actually handled on the fly. We take care of those.
Okay. I mean, because that's a critical thing. You always have that fear that, there could be invalid characters and, and so on. And you're always fearful that you're beginning the migration process and you're going to let it roll. Again, it could be a weekend project. And then all of a sudden, you check back in a few hours later and it's sitting there, right? There's always that fear. So you have that ability to, run those pre-scans and try to identify, where there could be conflict.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other, one of the things that we've had, interestingly, this week we've had a few migrations where people have an incredibly high, like I think one example was like 300 gig and 40 million files spread over incredibly high density, and they were looking to migrate that. Now every single one of those is an API call, so that sort of migration gets hit with rate limiting, not by us but by the destination platform.
Right.
Versus say moving 100 terabytes and maybe only having 5-6 million files. Actually, we're going to move that really, really quickly versus that high density. So knowing that up front, it comes into being able to talk to your client about that and say, hey, this is not a limit. This is it's not a limitation of the platform, but it's just the process of making sure every one of those files, this chunk of data is going to move slower than, for argument's sake, accounting data. I'm taking a broad element here of lots of small files and CSVs or something like that will move slower than, say, the marketing data, which we may have large files and folders. So from a volume perspective, in data volume, that will move quicker versus a smaller data volume.
Well, and also too, and this goes a little bit back to our previous, a couple of our previous questions. You think about the, just the nature of data, out of sight, out of mind. When you think about a file cabinet, they're, essentially, you can only put so much in a file cabinet and you just can't close the drawer anymore, right? In the digital world, there are limitations as far as, whatever that device is, where that data resides, there are storage limitations, but it's a lot different where you just continue to pile it up and pile it up. And, there's that archive process. So, part of that planning aspect is planning in as far as what you're going to move and when you're going to move. You can hold off on moving some of that archived data, right? Because you don't want that to be in the process of, slowing the whole migration down when you have a weekend to get this done, so that Monday morning at 8 a.m. when people are starting to work, you want them to be up and running. But if you include all that archive data, that could just prolong the process, right?
Yeah. So and that's taking the strategy of actually, being able to say, okay, I actually in the transfers want to ignore the data that's older than 2 years. We're only going to move data that's been touched in the last 2 years, which would be obviously a smaller subset, and then you can decide what you want to do with that older data. But and I think the other thing we would generally encourage people to do is try not to leave it to a high pressure environment at the weekend. Try with what Movebot can do with deltas is to migrate your start the process on the Monday, and just get that data, depending on the volumes, of course, but get that data across into the destination platform. And then when it comes to the weekend, you can do a number of deltas. And basically what a delta will do is it will scan the source, scan the destination, and then just move the most recent data, any new data, and the most recent mod time of data across, and it will deposit that into the destination. So when you come to do your switchover on the Monday morning, it's a nice smooth switchover.
Yeah.
Your data is already there. You're not running into things like eventual concurrency within a cloud platform where it's still populating the data that you've moved over the weekend. Users come into their new platform and go, I can't see my data. It's actually there, but it's just taking time to populate. If we've done that week before, the weekend is a lot easier for everyone.
That's great. It makes life certainly a lot less stressful. Because we obviously know that just this entire process itself can be stressful without the right process and the right tools. So speaking of tools, when you take a look at a tool like Movebot, you offer a variety of features to streamline that migration process. Can you tell us what are some of those key features? And you have mentioned some of these, but what are some of those key features of Movebot and how it will simplify that process of the migration for an MSP?
Yeah, sure. We can, with Movebot, you can be incredibly selective about what you want to move. You can move, you can move one file and folder from one place to another, or you can do a whole tenant. It allows you to be incredibly selective and incredibly granular where you want to do. The tool itself is really quite easy to use, and what we pride ourselves on is generally moving that data fast. So you can get, depending on the destination platform, you're getting terabytes of data moved every day into the destination. So that's kind of the, in terms of easy to use, fast, and just really trying to simplify that whole process. And yeah, so the speed, easy to use, and we're pretty cost effective as well.
Excellent. And and just as we wrap up here, when I think about Movebot, or actually let me back up a little bit. When I think about doing a data migration, and I look to find a tool, I often you think about a tool is just a tool, but from our conversations, you guys offer quite a bit more than that from a support perspective. It's a tool, it's software, but you also are a service at the same time. Can you elaborate a little bit more as far as that benefit to the MSPs that, in the heat of the moment, they're doing these migrations and they're sweating, they're sweating and they're like, I'm stuck, where do I turn? Are you guys available to be able to help those MSPs in that process and best using the tools that you have available?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a number of ways to contact us, but also we have an MSP partner program, which we welcome MSPs to join. And that will enable access to our premium support, which we literally will, if the house is on fire and you're in that situation and you need to, pull that bell, that will wake someone up regardless of the time of day, and someone will be there to answer a call. So that's the situation to some extent we want to avoid, and we avoid that by having our support and solutions architects available to help. There's email support, which generally gets responded to within, at worst case, it's usually quicker than this, but within a couple of hours. We can jump on a call. We will talk, do video, face-to-face video calls, go through a migration. And we've also introduced the chat in the product itself. And it's not, despite the name Movebot, we do not have a bot in there. You are actually chatting with real people. So the response times is not necessarily, sometimes, if someone's there, and we often are, including me if you're unfortunate enough to get me. Those are the commercial questions. But we're there. You are actually talking with a real human. And I think that's important. We're not going to send someone down a line of just throwing up a help article or saying, go away and read this. You will get a quality response from any of our support team at any point in time in contacting in any of those methods that I mentioned.
That's awesome. And because that's just a critical thing, like we talked about in the beginning, is, you have that passion. This is 100% in your wheelhouse, and it, may not be the case for an MSP going through a migration. So being able to, lean on Movebot for that support is great. For any of our audience members that, would love to give Movebot a try, kick the tires, what is available for them to be able to try out your software?
So yeah, we're very accessible. Come to movebot.io. Also, have an explore on the Everything MSP portal. There's a special offer there for you, but you can jump into Movebot. We will give you straight from that platform 250 gig of data to have a test out with. We can also reach out to you, or you can reach out to us through our partner page and express, and come and look and join our partner program. It's a pretty straightforward process. We're just setting you up an agreement and appropriate pricing levels for MSPs. But through Everything MSP, we also will augment that with some extra data for you to run some trial migration. So I think with Everything MSP, contact us through your portal, Dan. We boost that by another 250 gig for 500 gig of data. So if you're doing an email migration, that's actually 2 or 3 good email migrations as well.
That's awesome. Well, data migration, as we've been talking here, can be a daunting task. However, if you have the right tools and the right partner and the right support, it doesn't have to be. And Colin, as always enjoy chatting with you. Appreciate your time. For all of our members out there listening, thank you so much for your time. If you want to learn more about Movebot, as Colin mentioned, you can go to movebot.io Additionally, if you go to everythingmsp.com, you can search for Movebot. We have a lot of great information available about Movebot, as well as ability to be able to reach out to them from there as well. With that being said, everybody have a great rest of your day. Colin, you as well. And we will talk to everyone later. Until next time, take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.